welcome. I'm Izzy at Minerva. We're going to be looking at how to hack one of our very own Minerva exclusive patterns today, and that's the Victoria Blouse. What we're going to do to this pattern is actually create an opening at the front. So currently it folds over and is all in one continuous nice beautiful piece, but we're going to create an opening and create a feature down the centre front, which is going to consist of 5 little bows. They're going to tie together and hold the garment together. We're also going to create a placket behind that so that we haven't got a gap down the centre of our blouse for a bit of modesty, and that's going to be quite a nice little radical change to the top. It's all going to fit and feel the same as you wear it, so no changes to the fit at all. It's literally just a change to the way it looks and to add a little bit of interest to the garment. As you follow along today, you're obviously going to need your pattern, which is the Victoria Blouse, available on our Minerva website, and obviously you're going to need some fabric as well. I would recommend that you take a look at our Minerva YouTube channel, where we've got a video that talks all about the recommended fabrics for this pattern, and also a video talking about how to grade between sizes and how to fit to the garment. Do take a look at this first before you join this video where we look at the pattern hacking, because those are really important still in terms of how the garment's going to fit you. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you how to hack the pattern, how to alter those pattern pieces, and then I'm going to show you the elements that we're going to sew together, which are different to the original pattern piece. If you feel like you need extra support in terms of sewing the original steps in the pattern, then feel free to go and check out our sew along, which is also available on our Minerva YouTube channel. Okay, let's get straight on into it. So the blouse looks like this. We've got currently a wrap over opening, and then the back is just all one lovely piece besides the cuff. So what we're going to do is we're not going to make any changes to the back. That's absolutely fine. We won't make any changes to the sleeve, but we're just really going to focus on what's happening down here at the front. So this is our pattern piece, the front bodice, and this is the main one we're going to be looking at today. The other pattern piece you're going to find helpful to have with you in a couple of minutes will be the front neck facing, because as you can see, that just sits like directly over the front. So the neckline is going to change, so both these A and B are going to change. The very first thing we're going to do is actually draw in the centre front line. Now when it's all folded over, the centre front is actually halfway between these two dots here. So just find the midpoint, which is at 3.2 centimetres, and then just square all the way down with a little dashed line. Now I'm using a Sharpie pen, but at home please do use a nice sharp pencil, just so you can ensure you've got a nice amount of accuracy. Continue that line all the way up to the top of the pattern piece as well. Label this your centre front line. Now that's just a really helpful guide on the pattern piece, because it's really important to know where our centre front is, because that's where we want the two things to tie together. But let's not forget that we're going to have these little bows right down the front, so they're actually going to take up a little bit of volume, opening up a space between the front two pieces as they meet. So we actually need to remove a little bit of volume from our panels in order to accommodate those little bows. So all I'm going to do is to offset, draw a line parallel to the centre front that is 5 millimetres offset. And this basically becomes our seam line for our panel. So you're then just going to want to add a seam allowance of 1.5 centimetres to that line you just drew, and mark that all the way down. Now what I'm going to do, because this isn't a block, because this pattern piece has got a seam allowance in it already, I just want to mark on where the seam allowance is down the neckline. So I'm just going to dash that out. So this point here becomes our junction of our fold line. When the fabric's sewn together, that becomes the edge of our garment. So what I want to do now is just to mark the location and put some notches down this line here, which represent where the bows are going to go. So I really do want my first one really to be right at that junction there. Next one, let's say 10 centimetres away, then 20, 30 and 40. And let's cut away this extra volume now here, we don't need it anymore. And now with those notches, I'm just going to extend them out to the edge of my pattern piece, so that I know where to cut them when I'm cutting my fabric, where to mark them. Basically, we've done the change that we need to do to our front, and we're going to just cut two separately, but we need to do the facing as well. So grab your front neck pattern piece A, and just pop it underneath the pattern piece, lining it all up really beautifully, so you're getting it all really perfectly matching up. And then basically we just want to draw a line along here and trim it off, so that now the facing follows the line of the blouse. But because we've now got an opening down here, we need to extend the facing all the way down. Okay, so we've got another piece of paper now under here, and all we're going to do is literally just mark where the bottom of the hem is, and the width of the piece of paper is 8 centimeters, which aligns approximately with the width of the facing up here. So this will then become our new facing pattern piece. Now it might be helpful, if you can see the notches through the piece of paper, just to mark those on as well as a nice little reference. Okay, at this point we have now got one facing which works really nicely. It would be fine just to leave it like that and duplicate it for both sides. However, we want to add this little modesty placket underneath our bow so we don't have a gap down the centre front. So we actually need to draft a slightly different shape of facing for the other side so that it includes a little flap that goes underneath. Okay, so trace over that one facing and then cut that facing pattern piece out. Okay, so what we have here is two exact replicas, but one facing needs to go on the right side and the other needs to go on the left side. So with our tracing piece, I'm actually just going to flip it over. So this one will be for one side and this for the other side of the body. And then just label this Victoria Blouse, bow front, cut one, right side up. Okay, let's now work on the other side of our facing in order to extend it out a little bit to create that coverage that we want at the front. So we'll continue working with this pattern piece. Draw a dashed line 3 centimeters offset from the current edge of the pattern piece. Label this your fold line. Then mark another parallel line 4.5 centimeters away from that fold line. Now it's 4.5 centimeters because it accommodates the 3 centimeter offset from the fold line plus a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. Now draw a little dashed line from this notch coming straight out. And then draw a solid line 1.5 centimeters above it for your seam allowance. Now you're going to have to trust me on this one. Basically what we've done is we've drafted out a complete pattern piece which is then going to attach onto here at this point here and then fold back on itself to create this little gap in this centre front and to cover that gap in the centre front. And that is what our other facing pattern piece looks like. It's just worth labelling this one to say exactly what it is. So this is our bow top adaptation, our bow front, and we're going to cut one with right side up. And that's all there is to the front. Let's go and draft out some little bow pattern pieces now because we also need to create those bows to tie the front. Okay, so grab a new fresh clean sheet of paper and we're basically going to draw a nice little rectangle on here. With the bow, I want it to be about 25 centimeters long. You may want it shorter or longer depending on the aesthetics that you want. So to start off with, let's just draft the bow the size that we want it when it's done. So I'm just going to dash this little line out. This is going to be my block line effectively. I want it to be 25 centimeters long. And I actually want it to be like 1 centimetre wide in total. But if I want it 1 centimetre wide and I want it doubled over, I need to make sure that it's 2 centimetres deep in total. Brilliant. So basically that's the shape of the bow that I want once it's all sewn up together. But now I need to add my seam allowance. So add your seam allowance to the entire perimeter of the piece. And then we'll just label it up. So this is the Victoria Blouse bow top, bow tie, cut 10. Brilliant, and those are all the changes that you need to make to the pattern pieces in order to create this bow tie front for the Victoria Blouse. So as we come to sew the pattern piece, which we're going to do now, we're basically going to try and follow along with the instruction booklet as much as possible. However, we have done quite a lot of changes to the front. So we need to add a whole load of new steps into the process, which I'll talk you through. However, like the back and the sleeves and the hem and all of that is as per the instruction booklet. So we are just going to sew the bits that are different. I'm going to show you that today in the video. If you want some further help in terms of the instruction, the standard instructions as per the book, there is a lovely little sew along that you can follow online. So do take a look at that on our Minerva YouTube channel if you want additional support throughout the sewing process. In today's video, I'm going to be using our Minerva Exclusive Mottled Margay Viscose Chalet fabric. And this has got a really nice drape to it, which is why I think it's going to work really nicely for this particular hack. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually create our little bow ties. Now we've got 10 of them in total. I've prepped 9 here, and I'll just show you how I did that. So right sides together, we're then going to sew along one short end and all the way down the long end, leaving an opening at the bottom. Just like that. Then we're going to grab a pair of scissors and just snip the corner. Trim down the seam allowances by about half. Next, I'm going to take my prim turning tool and we'll tag this tool below the video so you can find it on our website. I'm going to push the main blue tube into the fabric like that, and then take the dowel and just poke it through this way. So then it turns it right side out. Now, there's lots of different ways that you can do this. This is just one of my preferred methods. Once you've done that, you can just press it nice and flat so that it looks like that. Now we've got 2 sets of the front pattern piece, and basically we want to put all these ties onto the front. So just take one tie, one side to start off with. And just with the right sides together, can you see we've got some little notches along the front where we want to attach these bow ties to. So we're very simply, just with right sides together, obviously it's all right sides, isn't it, for the bow. We're just going to clip those in place using the notches as our guide. Now we're putting the raw ends aligning, so the raw end of the tie is lining up with the edge of the fabric as we do this as well, because it will be encased in the facing in a few minutes. Great, and once you've done that on one side, we can then do the exact same process for the other side. Brilliant, just like that. Next, we're just going to tack those in place so they don't move around when we sew the facing down onto them. And we're just going to tack that at just within the 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. Brilliant, so they are all now sort of tacked in place, ready to sew in between our facing. So let's do that next. Okay, we've got 2 facing pattern pieces. They're obviously different, but they're sort of matching in with the V shape. What we're going to do first of all is just finish the raw edges in whatever method you prefer. I'm going to overlock them. Great, so they look like that and they've just been nicely finished now. We're going to take the left side of the top first and grab your piece of facing, and we're just going to lay it right sides together. And this is very similar to the original instructions in that we're going to lay it right sides together. We should have some little notches that will line up with the notches on the front pattern piece, and then pin all the way along the raw edge just like that. So using your standard seam allowance. Fantastic, and once that's done, we're then just going to iron the seam allowance towards the facing. Okay, and once you've pressed it, we're then going to sew a little line of understitching all the way along the facing, catching the seam allowance at the same time. Brilliant, then just press that so that it's all sitting really nice and smooth and looking great. So interface your facing, the whole of it, and then just mark your 1.5 centimetre seam allowance down the side there and across the top at this point. Do the same on the end over here, just so you've got some nice little reference points which will help you in a minute. We then want to fold right sides together so that that and that cross match up beautifully. So fold it together, and obviously you can use a nice little pin just to pivot through and just check that it's hitting that nice and evenly. Great. At that point, we're just going to sew from the cross to the end, just like that. Clip the corner, and then on this side here, clip into the corner here, to the end of the stitch line effectively. Turn it right side out. Fold and press along that line so that you've got an even distribution of width all the way along. Okay, next just turn this section over, and we want to attach this section just to the front. So pin that in place. Then once you've pinned it, just sew using a standard seam allowance all the way up to that pivot point up there, up to the original stitch line. Brilliant. Okay, just like that. And then we're just going to continue to sew up this stretch up here. So pin that in place. And then sew again from that pivot point up to the top. Okay, brilliant. And then turn it out like that. And then what you'll see is we've got an integrated placket, all beautifully integrated into our front piece. So when the other section ties together, we've got a nice little bit of privacy in the middle there. Okay, lay it flat like that. We're then just going to tack the bottom in place, just from there to the stitch line, and that's it. Then just very carefully open up that seam and fold the whole thing under, so that it's sitting nice and flat. Just pin that seam allowance to the facing, and if you'll flip it over, you'll see that our pins are just sitting on a section which you can't see from the front, which is brilliant. What we're going to do now is we're going to sew a line of stitches just to the left, just to the inside of that original stitch line, all the way up, and then all the way up here. Effectively what we're doing is we are under stitching the seam allowance to the facing. And once you've done all that lovely understitching, you can just press that in place to give it a really nice, neat finish. So effectively what we've done is we've sort of prepped the front and put the facing on the front, which is sewing instructions 9 to 13 really effectively. You can then follow, for the back pattern piece, you can then follow the instructions for steps 4 to 8 so that you have the little band of facing integrated and sewn onto the back just as it's shown in the picture right there. So you can see that's been done. Great. So then effectively we've done everything on that page, obviously differently because we've been hacking the pattern. We've done everything on there. And now we're just very simply going to follow the same instructions as the rest of the booklet asks us to. So we're going to attach the front to the back at the shoulders. We're then going to finish it as it says. We're then going to sew the side seams, adding the slit, and then also just adding the cuff as per the instructions. So let's go and do that now. Excellent, so we're almost there. We've added on the little cuffs onto the sleeves, and all we need to do now is just do the hem. We're just going to do the hem in the same way as the instructions say to do it, but obviously we've got like two fronts, so we've got two separate pieces, and we've obviously also got the facing as well at the front. So just as a little reminder, we're going to turn it up and then turn it up one more time and stitch it. So that applies also to the facing. So the facing will be captured in just like that. And then once you've hemmed it, let's go try it on. So here's our Victoria blouse. It does look really different, doesn't it, compared to our standard one, but the way it fits is just looking really nice, and I really love just making those small little changes. It has a really big impact aesthetically on what the garment looks like. So thanks for joining me today. I've been Izzy at Minerva. I hope you found that really fun and really creative and just really enjoyable, and that you have loads of fun sewing that version up at home too.